Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm David Hopper, Austin Bureau Chief of 360degreesound.com, a website where we cover music from all angles. The South by Southwest 2005 Music Festival is upon us. It will take place March 10th to 15th in Austin, Texas, and we'll be bringing you exclusive interviews with artists as part of our South by Southwest Artist Spotlight series. Today, I'm joined by multi-instrumentalist, producer, arranger, and composer Sly5thAve. Sly's compositions are shaped by his love of hip hop and his deep understanding of soul and jazz music. Sly, thanks for joining 360degreesound.com.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, for our viewers and readers who aren't familiar with you and your music, you're, as I said, a multi-instrumentalist, producer, arranger, composer. You wear a lot of hats. I was wondering if you could kind of give us a brief introduction about your career thus far and the many projects you're involved with.
Yes, sir. I think uh, uh, all of those things arose out of necessity. I first and foremost consider myself, I'm a saxophone player. I love jazz music. And I grew up playing in church. And so that's where kind of like all those, that was my entry point into it. And then when I moved to New York, I got involved with these guys that were kind of like indie rockers that were making beats and producing things. That's when I first got involved with like behind the scenes kind of producing things. And from there was like, oh, I want to do something because I would always want to put more horns on the recording than they needed. Like we only needed like one flute and I wanted to put 15 flutes because I heard like this whole arrangement in my head. So I started producing like my own horn tracks, which evolved into me like being a full-time arranger. And then the whole time I've always liked writing my own music. So yeah, I don't know how they just all kind of came about, trying to survive.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I saw where you received some formal jazz training at University of North Texas, a well-respected music school. Um, I know you've been in situations where you didn't have to write music or do so
hmm
much theory and composition, but and you played a lot of different settings. But I was wondering how you think that kind of formal jazz background has benefited you in your career.
It was cool because like I started from a place of reading music. Like when I was learning to play the saxophone, I had my little I think the Ed Suetta Band Method Volume One was the first book, and then Rubank Advanced Method. And like so, we were reading music and then playing in the marching band and the wind ensemble up until my senior year in high school. And then, but playing in church, that was the first time I really had to like improvise and kind of play by ear and soulful. And so when I got to North Texas, I started, and most of it before then was just kind of like luck. Like I'm like, all right, I know the B flat blues scale, or like I know this one thing that works, and I just played it on every song, regardless of what key it was in. But then when I got to North Texas, I started to be able to make the connections between what I was hearing and what my habits were, and then like how that related to the music, like in a theoretical sense. And then I left North Texas, and then I was like, I need to forget all this shit, otherwise I'm just gonna sound like a robot all the time. So like, it's a constant balance of like, okay, feel and then like theory and all that stuff. So I feel like it's a good place to exist because I can communicate with rappers, with people that don't read music or know what the names of the notes are, and I can also communicate with, like an orchestra and be like, okay, change this note and measure 55, beat three, whatever.
Mm.
And,
Yeah,
so
that's
that
interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, speaking of an orchestra, your latest album, Liberation, was recorded with the 40-piece orchestra. There's a history of that in jazz, having jazz artists playing with the orchestra, but I would imagine that's not all that common today. Tell us a little bit about how that opportunity came about and the process of arranging and recording with an orchestra.
I think just kind of like when I took an arranging class actually in North Texas, and in college I was finding myself, so I would frequently show up late. Uh, lagging a little bit from whatever happened the night before because it was a jazz music college. So like I was hanging out a bunch, but I was practicing more than I was hanging out for sure. But I was kind of lazy. I didn't really want to do the work. And so when I started kind of making these horn arrangements and things, it I was very reluctant. I was like, oh, I really want to do this. Oh, but no, I don't want to be an arranger. That's so much work. Um, and then it kept evolving and evolving. And like they called me to do this Cali Love show in LA maybe 10 years ago, which is the music of Dr. Dre. And like, can you do it? Can you write for strings? I was like, yes. I had never done it before. And so like I had to figure it out. And that just led me deeper and deeper. Started doing like some arrangements on the side for some things. And then I had always, I guess like occupying the space between like written music and, the oral tradition, non-written music. Like I've always kind of been interested in like I love Mozart, I love Beethoven, I love like the classic uh, string symphonies and pieces. Barber Adagio for strings is one of my favorite. Um, but I felt that like my place was to kind of bridge, like take the orchestra, which is this amazing, big, impressive thing, and infuse that with something that's like more relatable to my generation and to people who maybe didn't grow up listening to that classical music. And so that was easy with the music of Dr. Dre because everybody that's my age knew Dr. Dre, and even people who are younger. Like there's a bunch of cultural references, so there's that connection to the music, um, which is sometimes difficult for people in this day and age with Instagram short attention span. And so Liberation was an attempt to do a fully original uh, project, and kind of just everything. I took everything that I've learned over like the last 10 years or so. And because I tried to write it like several times before, but then post pandemic, spent a lot more time by myself and I was doing a lot more arranging because I had to lean into that to make money when all the gigs and everything stopped. Um, and so I was like, all right, if I'm going to spend all this time working on other people's projects, making their stuff sound awesome, like doing string arrangements, whatever, orchestra arrangements, I'm like, let me like sit down and do this thing that I've been talking about doing for like forever. And then I sat down to write it, and I woke up 2 months later, and it was done because I had a bunch of time to sit inside. And so, yeah, it was just kind of like my homage to like I love the black exploitation soundtracks. I love hip hop. I love like I love those classic arrangements like Burt Bacharach, like all the stuff that he did with Hal David and Dionne Warwick, like the Alfie and those cheesy like 60 songs. Like I love all that stuff. Or like Frank Sinatra. And I think the only reason people don't do it as much today is just for logistically, it's a lot more difficult with because the music industry has changed in the last 25 years or so. So it was a passion project for sure. I saved all my pennies and I just went for it. Like, and actually, it was funny. Like, it was gonna be because I was thinking from a place of scarcity, like trying to save money. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna make like a B tape and then put some strings on it. But then we did the strings, and I was like, man, they sound so dope. We got to do everything else with it too. And so then I just got carried away, and like it became like this full orchestra record. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
long
Yeah,
answer.
that's great. I really like the how heavy it is on the with the strings and yeah, you mentioned like Bacharach and yeah, Alfie's one of my favorite tunes of his. But yeah, it was very much a thing
Uh,
in the '60s to just put strings on so many of the pop
yeah.
recordings of the time. But I like how you yeah kind of gave it a modern update. Yeah, you mentioned your near the end, Dr. Dre project, the Invisible Man, that orchestral album, and it got me thinking about like the history of jazz and hip hop.
Mhm.
Obviously, in the '90s, there's a Digital Planets, a Tribe Called Quest, a lot. Was the Gangstar's or Gurus, Jazzmatazz. So you had a kind of jazz rap was a thing, and I got to thinking about 5 years ago. I saw the Blue Note Records documentary. That was really good, and that was a whole segment where they talked about how jazz and hip hop are intertwined and related. But I was wondering, I guess to a non-musician, what is it about jazz and hip hop that makes them so complementary, you think?
Mm, I thought this is funny. I think about this a lot because my process is kind of to sample uh, myself. Like I'll make beats, and then from the beat, I like kind of chop it up, and then I'll be like, okay, now we have the song. Um, but like hip hop musicians, like if you talk to like let's say like the first or maybe even the second generation of hip hop musicians, if you ask them what they listen to, they're not listening to other hip hop. They're not listening to like I mean they do. I'm sure they got their favorite artists, but like you talk to Snoop. Who's Snoop talking about? He's talking about Bootsy, Parliament Funkadelic, like all those classic 70s, 60s, 70s soul records that were very very heavy on like the jazz. Um, and kind of like drew their inspiration from there because that was like we had like the jazz era, the swing era, and then like the 60s to the 80s there was like R&B, rock and roll, all these things that came out of jazz music and that were populated by jazz musicians playing in these bands to make playing the popular music. And so it's interesting like because I feel like a lot of rappers today, well, the good ones do, but like a lot of rappers only listen to rap, and so like honestly, I don't really listen to rap anymore, except for when I'm working out and I just need to feel like a bunch of energy, a bunch of like capitalist energy to like make me lift like another rapper or something. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I'm not like inspired
Yeah.
by like rap today because it's empty. That's a pretty sweeping condemnation. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't do that, but so I think that's why you said people like jazz has had this resurgence in the last 5 years because I think people are going back to substance. Like even with AI, even with all these things are available to us, people still want to see somebody play their heart out in front of you, and not rely 1,000% on the computer. But yeah, I think the interconnectedness is because jazz is the blueprint of everything, of every modern Western music, like harmonically, rhythmically, um, and stylistically. And then they sampled a bunch of uh, jazz records on all those original, like on the 80s, 90s hip hop. They were sampling all jazz records, all soul records.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I think
Yeah.
they'll forever be connected, or at least the process of sampling. And now, like what jazz musicians are doing is they're sampling these hip hop records, which sampled other records. They're sampling these records and performing them live, and like making new songs. Sometimes doing covers, but making new songs as well. So like it keeps in that way. I think it keeps kind of like reinterpolating it. It's
Yeah.
so
No, it's interesting. Yeah, you have like samples of samples.
yeah, yeah, samples on
Yeah,
samples.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot in recent years with hip hop.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I saw where you said in one interview that you were inspired by the late great Quincy Jones. He recently passed, so thought
Yeah.
I'd ask about him. He obviously had a hand in so many superstars' careers over many decades, but at his core, he was a jazz guy and a brilliant arranger. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, what are some things you've learned from listening to Quincy's arrangements?
I feel like he was always connected with kind of like like he. Well, I first started learning about him. Like we had this my favorite class that I took at North Texas was Intro to Jazz Records. With this amazing professor, Professor John Murphy. Our rest in peace, passed away recently. But he, it was just a class where we came in and we would listen to records and we would talk about what we were listening to and we would talk about who was playing. It was the best class. Like for a nerd, it was incredible. But that was when I first heard about Quincy because Quincy got his start doing big band arrangements for Count Basie. Um, and so from there, I was like, oh, Quincy Jones. I'm like, wait, my parents had a CD because my parents had a CD. It was Miles and Quincy live at the Montreux. And then I remember seeing, like, I grew up watching The Fresh Prince. I'm like, wait, Quincy Jones produced this too. And then, uh, you know, Off the Wall and Thriller, like, yeah, if you're born in the 80s, you know what those records are. I don't care who you are, where you come from, you know what those records are. Um, and those were produced by Quincy too. I was like, wait, like, because honestly, when I was in jazz school, I was just like, okay, I only am focused on jazz. I don't want to deal with anything pop or blah blah. Blah. So I kind of like at first was like, all right, Quincy, oh yeah, he does kind of like pop stuff, but he's cool. He's cool. I like him. He wrote the song Kill, or he did an arrangement of Killer Joe and da 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 da. But then as I got older, man, I just realized that like the space that I frequently found myself occupying, like in between these worlds, is like the same space that he occupied. Kind of like yeah, he had his hand in the jazz lane, but then also was connected to these like pop things. And I don't know, he just I feel like he had a way of like every time I listen to like his music or something that he did, I'm like, wow, this is exactly what this situation needs. And like knowing that he's like this fully capable jazz trumpet player well, he had the aneurysm, but you know, if he needed to, he could solo over something. He could write this crazy string run or complex stuff or but like for me, the thing I take from him is he just knew exactly what the situation needed.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, one of my favorite scores by him is this thing. It's called The Palm. There's a movie called The Pawnbroker, which is a film about a Holocaust survivor who's kind of just living in despair in the slums of East Harlem and kind of just like really just talks about like his loss of hope and just this despair at life and at some point he almost reignites this flame or whatever. Um, but it's a tragedy, you know. And then, but that feeling of hopelessness and despair, like when you listen to the score, you're like, oh my God, like I feel it. Like, and then when you watch the movie with the score, you're like, oh man, like I see it, I hear it, I feel it. Like this is, so I don't know, Quincy, I keep giving you these long answers, I'm sorry, but Quincy, I think just he always seemed to know the appropriate thing for the given situation, and he always seemed to know who to hire for the job. Because Quincy is an incredible string arranger, but he didn't write the string arrangements for those Michael Jackson albums. Benjamin Wright did.
Mhm.
Benjamin Wright is another incredible string arranger, but like just we think about like his career, like musically, but then look at like the thing, like he's the one that put Oprah on. Like imagine being like, Oprah, I need something. You know she's gonna pick up Oprah. Like wow. But this kind of seemed to be the mastermind of kind of looking at the big picture instead of just like jazz or trumpet. And I think that's why he was able to be so successful because he that was his, you know, he could see it all.
Yeah, right. Can see the big picture and had a great ear. I think I saw an interview recently, or it was one of his older interviews where I think he had fought with Michael Jackson about the strings at the beginning of "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough," and he was like, Michael Jackson didn't want it, but Quincy insisted like we need these, and like that's kind of what a big part of what makes the song what's so memorable about it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. I had kind of one more influence question, just because you seem to be a real student of the classics, and as we said earlier, you're a jazz saxophonist, and there's obviously a long history with so many greats: Charlie Parker, Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Wayne Shorter.
Yes, sir.
The list goes on. I was wondering if you could maybe just name a few of your sax heroes and who has influenced your playing.
Definitely those guys that you just mentioned. And then right now, I'm really obsessed with studying Sonny Stitt and Cannonball Adderley. Um, Sonny Stitt played alto and tenor, but there's some recordings of him playing baritone, which are really interesting. I play the tenor and the baritone, so. Um, but yeah, I'm obsessed with those guys. Joe Henderson is one of my is like my Mount Rushmore. Like that's my guy. Joe Henderson is like. Mm. And then, you know, there was obviously like a train obsession phase, like with every saxophone player that wants to play tenor. And I still love him. But like, yeah, who else am I listening to right now? I was listening to Johnny Griffin
Mhm.
and who else do I got in mind? I think that's it right now. I'm like super obsessed with Sunny Stitt and Cannonball like today. Like that's all I'm listening to.
Yeah, something else is a perfect record that kept
Woo!
the
Woo!
miles on that too. I read where you're 6'5", and that made me think of Dexter Gordon. He was a talent.
Yeah.
towering saxophonist. I think he was 6'6". Was he
Yeah.
was Gordon inspiration?
No, Dexter Gordon definitely an inspiration. Actually, I was shedding his tune the other day, Fried Green Bananas.
Hmm.
It's just a contrafact on, anyways. But like, yeah, no, Dexter's tone and like his thick sound and articulation, like just when he tongues a note, you feel the weight of the entire note. Like, yeah, man, it was like the way he played, you could tell that he was 6'6",
Yeah.
because you see the shorter guys, they're playing more notes for the
Yeah.
top. It's like, yo, man, they already see me. I just gotta like, just gotta make this feel good, you know?
That's
But,
funny. Uh, yeah. Well, great. Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. I guess finally, if for the viewers and readers out there who are coming to South by and want to catch one of your shows, just wondering what they could expect from Sly Fifth Ave set.
well, I think, yeah, the catalog is kind of, I won't say all over the place, but there's different things. There's orchestra things, there's production things, there's jazzy things. But what I've kind of settled on is if we're gonna play live, I'm just gonna get my band of my good friends and get my saxophone, and I'm just gonna play the hell out that saxophone. So we're gonna be doing some music from Liberation. We're gonna be doing some music from What It Is. We're gonna be doing some new unreleased music, and yeah, it's gonna be a lot of good melodies, a lot of improvisations. But it will be a jazzy show for sure. But it will be a show that you can connect to, and hopefully leave you feeling will connect with you in an emotional way and leave you feeling uplifted. You know,
Great. Well, yeah,
that's it.
can't wait to catch one of your stats. That sounds great. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Again, I'm David Hopper of 360degreesound.com, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to music from all angles. And thank you, Sly, again for taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh man, thank you. It's my absolute pleasure. And
Awesome.
wait, well, so will I see? Am I going to get to meet you in person this week? Or
Yeah,
you?
for sure. I'll come say hello. Yeah, I definitely want to catch one of your sets, so I'll be reviewing the schedule and make sure I'll come say hello and check it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. You take care.
You too, brother. Peace.
Bye.